The form is 3 pages. You sign it without reading past the first. Not because you're careless, because the part that matters isn't written down. The part that matters is why your hand isn't shaking when you pick up the pen. The recruiting sergeant doesn't look up when you slide it back across the desk. He checks a box, stamps something, hands you a yellow copy. That's it. No handshake. No welcome. One yellow piece of paper that means you've just given the British Army permission to find out exactly what you're made of. You fold it, put it in your jacket pocket. Walk out into a Tuesday afternoon that looks exactly like every Tuesday afternoon before it. That's the first thing nobody tells you about this decision. It doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like finally admitting something you already knew. There are 47 other men who will stand at Sterling Lines on the same morning as you. A former para from Belfast who hasn't slept more than 5 hours in 2 years by choice. A Royal Marine from Plymouth whose file is cleaner than anyone else's in the room. A signals officer who looks like he wandered into the wrong building. They all signed the same form. They all had the same expression walking out. Certain, quiet, already somewhere else in their heads. 39 of them will not sign a second form. You don't know that yet. You're standing on a pavement outside a building in a town you drove 3 hours to reach, holding a yellow piece of paper and thinking about the drive back, whether to stop for food, whether to call your father. You don't call him, not yet. There's nothing to say yet. The man who sat next to you in the waiting room is still inside. You heard him ask the sergeant a question about leave allowance. You remember thinking, wrong question. You don't know why you thought that. You just did. You never see him again after Sterling Lines. But you don't know that standing here. All you know is the weight of one yellow page in your jacket pocket and the strange, specific silence of a choice that has already been made. You start driving. Your hands are shaking, not from fear, from cold. There is a difference. Fear lives in your chest. Cold lives in your hands, your jaw, the place behind your knees where the muscle has stopped responding the way you tell it to. It is day 7 of selection, and you have learned to catalog these things precisely because precision is the only thing still functioning correctly. The Brecon Beacons do not care about your preparation. They do not care about the miles you ran in the 6 months before this, the weight you carried, the times you woke at 4 in the morning in your own bed to simulate something you couldn't actually simulate. The plateau at 2,000 feet in January is a different physics. Wind that doesn't gust, it presses continuously, like something that has decided your Bergen is 28 kilograms. It was 25 when you started. Water absorbs into everything up here. The weight grows without your permission. Day 7, not day 3. Day 3 was hard. Day 7 is something else. Day 3, you still had a version of yourself you recognized. By day 7, that version has been filed down to something smaller and more accurate. The man who talked too much on the first night is gone. You noticed him on day 1, loud in the bunk room, full of regiment stories. The kind of loud that is actually a question asking to be reassured. By day 4, he was quiet. By day 6, his bunk was empty. Nobody announced it. The bunk was simply empty, and the space where his noise used to be was filled with nothing, which was its own kind of answer. You stop at the top of a ridge, not because you're finished, not because the checkpoint requires it. You stop for 4 seconds because you want to remember this exact feeling. The cold, the weight, the strange stripped down clarity of a mind that has run out of everything except forward. Most people never feel this. You are feeling it right now. That is worth 4 seconds. An instructor at the checkpoint looks at your heel, which has been bleeding since yesterday. He rewraps it in under a minute, hands you back your rifle, and says one word: continue. You continue. What you don't know is that somewhere behind you, an instructor has drawn a red line through a name on a clipboard. You never see whose name it is. You still don't know. You pass. Nobody shakes your hand. The sand-colored beret is placed on a table. You pick it up, you put it on. Someone takes a photo for the file. That is the ceremony. That is all of it. For approximately 1 afternoon, you allow yourself to feel something close to arrival. Then the next morning, you walk into your first briefing as a badged member of D Squadron 22 SAS, and you understand within 4 minutes that you have not arrived anywhere. You have been granted entry to the bottom floor of a building with no visible ceiling. The briefing contains 43 acronyms you don't recognize. You write all of them down. You write them in a column on the left side of your notebook with a blank space on the right where the meaning should go. By the end of the briefing, the left column has 43 entries. The right column has 11. You do not ask about the other 32. This is the first correct decision you make inside the regiment. Sergeant Okafor runs your troop. He is 34 years old, built like someone who has never once done anything for appearance, and he has a specific way of not looking directly at you that communicates more than most people's direct eye contact. On your third day, he is standing 6 feet away. When you make a navigational call that is technically correct but tactically slow, he says nothing. He doesn't look at you. That night, you reconstruct every step of the decision and find the half second you wasted. You never waste that half second again. Week 3, you ask one question in a group debrief. A genuine question, correctly framed, relevant to the task. The room does not go silent. No one turns to look at you. The conversation simply continues around your question like water around a stone, and you realize the question was not wrong. The timing was wrong. You write that down too. No acronym needed. On the last day of week 3, Sergeant Okafor calls your name across the briefing room. First time, your name, clearly, in front of everyone. He doesn't say anything else, just your name. You spend the next 2 days trying to understand what it meant. You stop thinking about survival. You start thinking about precision. This happens quietly between 1 week and the next without announcement. Survival is the threshold. You clear it or you don't. Precision has no threshold. It only has closer and closer and never quite there. You have been inside the regiment long enough to understand that the second pursuit is the one that never ends, and that this is not a problem. This is the point. You are 24. You have been on 2 operational tours that you will not describe in specifics for the rest of your life. What you can say is that both of them required you to make decisions in environments where the variables changed faster than the briefing predicted, and that on both occasions the decisions held. Corporal Vance is the best technical operator in the troop. He is not the fastest. He has never once been the fastest, but in 11 months of working alongside him, you have never seen him wrong. Not imprecise, not approximately correct, wrong. It hasn't happened. You start watching the way he processes a room when he enters it, the sequence his eyes move in, the half-beat pause before he commits to any direction. You practice the pause. In a CQB exercise inside the training facility at Hereford, your team clears a 4-room structure in a time that is not the fastest recorded. It is, however, the most controlled. The debrief lasts 90 seconds. The directing staff marks 3 things on the board. All 3 are correct. None of them are praise. They are simply the next problem. You write them down. After the debrief, Vance is pulling kit by the vehicles. He doesn't look up. He says, without context, without preamble, you found the pause. You don't respond. There is nothing to add. Your fingers, you notice later that evening, have started reading doors before your eyes do. The texture of a handle, the resistance in a hinge. Your hands are processing information your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. You're not sure when this happened. You're not sure it matters when, only that it did. In the SAS, the body learns first. The mind catches up eventually, if you're patient enough to let it. The mission ends. The wait doesn't. It is 4:17 in the morning at Heathrow Terminal 5. You're standing in a taxi queue behind a man in a business suit who is arguing quietly on his phone about a meeting that has been rescheduled. Your Bergen is 35 kilograms. Your total time in transit is 19 hours. You are wearing civilian clothes that feel slightly wrong, like a language you were once fluent in and have been away from long enough to develop an accent. The man in the suit doesn't look at you. Nobody looks at you. This is correct. This is exactly what you trained for. Invisible in any environment. You are invisible at Heathrow at 4:17 in the morning, and some part of you notes this as an operational success, and the rest of you understands that this is a strange thing to think while standing in a taxi queue. The cab driver asks where you're coming from. Business trip, you say. He nods. Changes the radio station. Doesn't ask again. The hotel room is on the 4th floor. You open the door, and before you put down your Bergen, before you check the time or take off your jacket, your eyes move to the corners. Left, right, the space behind the door, the bathroom entrance. Clear, 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 clear. You didn't decide to do that. Your body decided. Your body is still working. You sit on the edge of the bed. You don't turn on the television. You don't check your phone. You sit on the edge of the bed in a hotel room in a city you were born in, and for 3 minutes, you do nothing at all. This is the slowest 3 minutes in the entire video. This is the still point at the center of everything. Your patrol had 4 men. You came back 4. There are patrols that don't come back 4. You know the names of the men in those patrols. You know their specific weights, their reaction times, their habits under pressure. You know them the way you know the dimensions of a room you've cleared 100 times. They didn't come back 4. You did. Not yet. Something in you says, Quietly, without drama. Not yet. You stand up, you hang your jacket, you are already thinking about the next task, because thinking about the next task is the only architecture that holds everything else in place. The 3 minutes are over. The wait is not. You know their names, all 16, their wives' names, their children's names, their breaking points. Nobody asked you to memorize these things. There is no form for it, no requirement in any manual, no box to check in any personnel file. You memorize them because this is what it means to be responsible for 16 human beings in environments where the difference between a man who holds and a man who doesn't is almost never physical. Trooper Reyes has been in the regiment for 6 years. His wife delivered their first child 11 days ago. He was in a training area in Scotland when it happened. He found out via a 2-line message passed through the duty sergeant. He has not spoken about it since. His patrol assessments since returning have been clean. His fitness scores are unchanged. On paper, Reyes is fine. You know Reyes is not fine. You don't pull him from rotation. You don't file a welfare report. You put him on the patrol with Corporal Adeyemi, who is the quietest man in the troop and the one most likely to simply be present without requiring anything in return. You make this decision in 30 seconds while looking at a scheduling board. You tell no one why. 3 weeks later, a sergeant major from another squadron asks you about Reyes. Routine inquiry, cross-unit readiness check. You answer in metrics, times, scores, assessments, all accurate, all true, all completely insufficient as a description of the actual human being you are discussing. The sergeant major writes something down and moves on. That evening, Reyes finds you by the vehicles. He's just back from a call home. His son's name is Daniel, 3 weeks old. He learned to track light 2 days ago, Reyes says, which apparently means something developmentally. His voice when he says this is the voice of a man standing in 2 places simultaneously. You nod. You say, good name. He walks away. You watch him go. You are the only person in this regiment who knows he cried in the car park after that phone call. He doesn't know you know. You will never tell him. This is not a burden you were given. It is a burden you chose. Every single day, you are in the same room. You speak 2 different languages. Both sides think you agree with them. This is not dishonesty. This is the most sophisticated skill you have developed in 21 years of service, and it has no name in any doctrine manual and appears on no performance review. It is the ability to hold 2 contradictory operational realities simultaneously without flinching, and to move information between them in a form each side can absorb without feeling diminished. The planning cell smells like coffee and recycled air. There is a whiteboard with a timeline on it. The timeline is structurally correct, logistically coherent, legally cleared, and it will not survive contact with the ground because it was built by people who have not been on the ground. And the one person in this room who has been on the ground is you. And you learned a long time ago that saying so directly solves one problem and creates 4 more. The analyst across the table is 28 years old. His name is Fletcher. He has a first-class degree from Bristol, a security clearance that took 14 months to process, and a genuine unironic commitment to getting this right. He is not the enemy. He is a man who has never once had to feel the difference between a plan and a place. You pick up a marker. You walk to the whiteboard. You don't change the timeline. You draw 1 additional line underneath it. A question, not a correction. What does this window look like if the ground transport runs at 70% capacity instead of full? Fletcher works through it, out loud, his own voice leading him to the problem you already saw 40 minutes ago. He finds it. He adjusts the timeline, his adjustment, his correction, his ownership. You put the marker down and return to your seat. 3 months later, Fletcher produces the clearest operational brief you have read in a decade. Precise, grounded, written by someone who has learned to think about the space between the plan and the place. He doesn't know how he learned that. You are the one holding the marker. That is a different kind of power. Quieter, more durable, the kind that doesn't require anyone to know your name. You are 37. You are the squadron, not its commander, the squadron itself. This distinction takes years to understand and cannot be taught directly. It arrives one morning when you realize that the decisions you're making are no longer about missions or personnel or readiness metrics. They are about what this place will be after you are gone. That is a different kind of decision. It operates on a different timescale. It requires a different kind of patience. Trooper Callahan is 26. His performance metrics are clean. His fitness is exceptional. His patrol assessments place him in the top third of the troop. On every instrument the regiment uses to measure a soldier, Callahan measures well. He breaks down in a group debrief on a Wednesday afternoon in February. Not loudly, not dramatically. He simply stops speaking mid-sentence, looks at a fixed point on the wall behind the directing staff, and goes somewhere else entirely for approximately 4 seconds. Then he comes back, finishes the sentence. Nobody comments. The debrief continues. You continue it. You do not stop the room. You do not redirect attention toward him. You let the debrief run its full course because stopping it would cost him something in front of the people he operates with, and that cost would compound across every patrol for the next 6 months. You find him afterward. You stand in the corridor outside the briefing room for 20 minutes before you knock on the door of the equipment room where he's doing kit checks alone. You use the 20 minutes deliberately, not because you don't know what to say, because you know that arriving too quickly communicates urgency, and urgency communicates alarm, and alarm is precisely what he doesn't need. You sit on a crate. He keeps working. You let the silence run until it becomes something comfortable rather than something loaded. Then you say, the hardest part isn't being here. The hardest part is explaining to someone who wasn't here why you choose to come back. He stops working, doesn't look at you, nods once, slowly, the way people nod when a sentence has located something they didn't know needed locating. You leave after 7 minutes. 3 years later, Callahan is the first person you call when you need someone whose judgment you trust without qualification. He picks up before the second ring. You've received 2 calls. You remember exactly where you were standing for both. You remember the floor you were looking at, the specific pattern of it, the way your weight shifted to your left foot without your permission. You will remember those floors for the rest of your life. This is not something anyone prepares you for, not the calls themselves, the floors. The way grief enters through the soles of your feet first and works upward. The way the world continues making noise around you. Phones ringing, doors opening, someone down the corridor laughing at something, and none of it stops, not for a single second, because the world doesn't know, and the world doesn't need to know, and this is correct, and also in that moment, almost unbearable. Standards are not abstract. This is what you understand now that you could not have understood at 22. Every standard you hold, every line you refuse to move. Every decision you make that is unpopular and correct and silent exists because of those floors. Because the men who didn't come back trusted that the place they gave everything to meant what it said it meant. His name is Bridger, not his rank. Bridger, 15 years, the man who found you in the cookhouse at 11 at night when your first patrol debrief went badly and said nothing, just sat down across from you and drank bad coffee until the thing passed. The man whose judgment you have trusted in 11 countries across 23 operations. He does something that doesn't break a rule, not technically, not on paper, but you see it. You see the precise moment where the standard bends, just slightly, in a direction that serves him and costs someone else something small and unverifiable. Only you saw it. You don't report it. You find him. You tell him what you saw, directly, without cushioning, without the translator's careful question. Just the thing itself, plainly spoken between 2 men who have known each other long enough that plainness is the only remaining form of respect. He is angry, genuinely, the kind of anger that lives close to something else. 8 weeks later, Bridger requests a transfer to another unit, voluntary. No stated reason, approved without discussion. He sends you 1 email 4 years later, a single line. You have read it many times. You have never replied, not because you don't know what to say, because some debts between people who have been through what you've been through don't settle with words. They settle with time. Or they don't settle. The email is still in your inbox. The building is exactly the same. The person walking through it is not. Sterling lines at night is a specific kind of quiet, not empty quiet, inhabited quiet, the kind that exists in places where enough has happened that the walls have absorbed some of it, and what remains in the air is not silence exactly, but the residue of 10,000 decisions made by people who understood the cost before they made them. You are 52 years old. You command 22 SAS. You have sat in ministerial briefings and budget reviews and capability assessments and international partnership conferences, and you have done all of it competently and without complaint, because it is the work, and the work is the work, and the men you are responsible for deserve someone in this chair who understands that administration is not the opposite of operational excellence. It is the condition for it. But tonight, the building is empty, and you are walking the corridor alone, and this is the closest you have felt to the truth of this place in months. You pass the photographs. You have passed them 1,000 times. You know most of the faces now, some by name, some by story, some only by the operation they represent and the outcome that followed. You walk past them the way you walk past familiar things, which is to say, mostly without seeing them. Then you stop. There is one photograph you have never stopped at before, taken in 1972, 4 men outside a building you don't recognize in a country you can identify from the vegetation. 3 of them are looking at the camera with the expression soldiers in photographs always have, which is the expression of men who know they are supposed to look a certain way and are doing their best to comply. The 4th man is smiling, not performing, not posing, smiling, the real kind, the kind that arrives without permission. He is 23 years old in this photograph. His name is not on the frame. You have worked in this building for 34 years and you do not know his name. He gave everything to something he believed was worth the price. Your entire career, every decision, every standard held, every line refused to move, every quiet correction and unpopular call and unattributed victory has been aimed at a single question that nobody asked you directly and that you have never answered out loud. Was he right? You reach the end of the corridor. The beret in your hand is sand-colored and worn at the edges. 34 years of it. You place it on your head one final time in the dark, empty corridor where nobody is watching and nobody needs to watch. You didn't build this. You inherited it. You carried it. You will hand it to someone who will carry it further. That is enough. That has always been enough. Who dares wins.